Hello, everyone. I'm Billy.
And I'm Kamraun. Welcome to the Horse Frog Podcast, home of your two favorite professional digressors and the creators of the Malazan Brotherhood.
Today, we'll be discussing Book 3, Chapter 11 of Deadhouse Gates, a novel in the Malazan Books of the Fallen. This is part 3 of our coverage of this chapter.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It's not a book review, and it is most definitely not intended to be a replacement to reading the books. Both Billy and I know this to be the best fantasy story ever written and want to share our love of the series with you.
We will be covering the events of this book in a linear fashion. There will be spoilers for those that have not read the books. We'll try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective books, but knowing my mouth, I'm still not sorry, and I'm not going to say anything. So, move along, sir.
A quick warning, today's episode contains descriptions of extreme violence. Listener discretion is advised.
Our show is listener supported. If you'd like to support us, we'd really appreciate that. So you can do that by visiting our Patreon link on our website at horsefrogproductions.com. Currently, we're posting ad-free episodes on Patreon weekly.
Also, we'd really like to hear from you. Send any feedback or comments to contact@horsefrogproductions.com. All right, Chapter 11, Part 3. We are taken to Kamraun, who is on the outskirts of an encampment. Corbolo Dom's army of the apocalypse was spread over the hills that marked the south edge of the plain. On each hilltop stood command tents and the raised banners of various tribes and self-proclaimed battalions. Between small towns of tents and wagons roamed vast herds of cattle and horses. The encampment's pickets were marked by 3 rows of crucified prisoners. Kites and risen and cape moths swarmed around each victim. The idea of crucifixion is bad enough, but the flies harassing you would be just an extra layer of horridity.
Absolutely. Do you know that we get our word excruciating from the word crucifixion?
I did not know that.
It comes from that. Yeah, so bad they finally outlawed it after a certain point. But yeah, it's the worst, man. I say that compared with these other bunch, when they want to do them sliding beds, they're both pretty awful.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which one I would choose, sliding bed or crucifixion.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's much of a choice there.
Yeah.
They're both going to be absolutely terrible.
Yes.
The outermost line rose above the earthworks and trenched less than 50 paces away from Kamraun's position. He lay flat in the high yellow grasses, the heat of the parched ground rising up around him. Insects crawled all over him. Kamraun ignored them, his eyes on the nearest of the crucified victims. A young Malazan lad of no more than 12 or 13. Cape moths rode his arms from shoulder to wrist, making them look like wings. Risen gathered in writhing clumps at his hands and feet, where the spikes had been driven through bones and flesh. The boy had no eyes, no nose. His face was a ravaged wound, yet he still lived. It's absolutely terrible.
Wow, I just forgot how bad these kids have been tortured and maimed prior to being crucified. And also, I'm assuming a lot of this has been done by the birds.
Yeah, I think in this individual's case, it's mentioned later that the birds did that to his face.
Okay.
The image was etching itself into Kamraun's heart like acid into bronze. His limbs felt cold, as if his own claim to life was withdrawing, pooling in his gut. He thought, I cannot save him. I cannot even kill him in swift mercy. Not this lad. Not a single one of these hundreds of Malazans surrounding this army. I can do nothing. Only one thing filled Kamraun with terror. Helplessness. But not the helplessness of being a prisoner or of undergoing torture. He'd been victim to both, and he well knew that torture could break anyone. He thought, but this. Kamraun feared insignificance, the inability to produce an effect, to force a change upon the world beyond his flesh. It was this knowledge that the scene before him was searing into his soul. He thought, I can do nothing. Nothing. He stared across the intervening 50 paces into the young man's sightless sockets, until he felt close enough to brush his lips against the boy's forehead, to whisper lies. Your death won't be forgotten. The truth of your precious life which you still refuse to surrender because it's all you have. You are not alone, child. The lad was alone with his withering, collapsing life. And when the body became a corpse, when it rotted and fell away to join all those others ringing a place that had once held an army, he would be forgotten. Another faceless victim, one in a number that beggared comprehension. The Empire would exact revenge, if it was able, and the numbers would grow. The imperial threat was ever thus. The destruction you wreak upon us and our kind, we deliver back to you tenfold. What are your thoughts on that from an Empire perspective? Is that a good deterrent?
It can be, but it apparently, with the people in 7 cities, maybe the hit has led to this whirlwind being so brutal in retaliation.
Yeah, the idea that by engaging in this kind of behavior, you're effectively creating the next generation of enemies that are going to come back, and it just perpetuates.
Yeah, I think so. Like I say, I can understand the need for some retribution, but retribution should be clean, I think.
I imagine it would be difficult to deal with the specific individuals that caused this to happen.
Yeah.
The civilians are always going to get caught up in it.
Oh, they are. It's just a bloodlust kind of sweeps, especially in this kind of mindset when they feel wronged, and they're right that they have been wronged. I'm assuming to some extent, but this kind of overkill is always yeah, you're right. It's more of a mob mindset happens. The military may not have wanted to do this at all. This could just be just the rabble, as it were, doing this.
Yeah. If Kalam succeeded in killing Lasine, then perhaps he would also succeed in guiding to the throne someone with spine enough to avoid ruling from a position of crisis. Kalam and Quickben had someone in mind for that. He thought, if all goes as planned. But for these children, it was too late. Do you have any guesses on who they are thinking of?
I do. Well, I've got two. I'm assuming it's Dewjack or Whiskey Jack.
I was thinking Whiskey Jack.
Ooh, Whiskey Jack would be an impressive. Yeah.
Because he doesn't want it.
Yeah. Neither does Dewjack, for that matter.
Dewjack's a little old.
He is old.
I take it back. There's sorceress stuff in this world. Potions and tinctures.
We do know something. We know for a fact, well, just flashback to Gardens, and we have Tattersall's own reference to the fact of her being, 120?
Right, but she is a mage.
Yes.
And presumably that's related to some relationship with the Warren.
Oh, okay. Are you talking about, some other things, other things? The spice. Sorry.
All right, I'm going to start a count. That's the first Dune reference of the day.
It can't be helped.
Yeah, there may be some type of alchemical stuff that can be.
I was going to say alchemical. Oh my gosh, you stole my word. But not going to say, but it was like I was going to say, and then you say it. I'm like, dadgummit, I should have lost.
Yeah, we're on the same wavelength. What can I say?
Exactly. We're using alchemical with a Y.
I don't know that I've ever seen it spelled that way.
I think it's CHYMIC. It's like old. I think it's supposed to imply more elderness to it.
Some eldritch type.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Is that the right word? Eldritch.
Yes. Eldritch alchemies versus just alchemies. It's like magics with a K. Also, it's like.
I've missed a couple opportunities to do magics recently, to my regret. Yeah.
Okay.
I should be using it more.
There was some high magics lately. Yes.
Kalam let out a slow breath, only now realizing he was lying on an ant's nest and its inhabitants were telling him to leave in no uncertain terms. He thought, I lie with the weight of a god on their world, and these ants don't like it. We're so much more alike than most would think. I'll tell you what, if these were fire ants, it wouldn't have taken him long to figure out that they were on him.
At that first bite, he'd be like, before I look at it, I need to find another spot.
Because fire ants, they all wait and then they attack simultaneously.
Yes. It's a pheromone thing.
Mm-hmm. I think I've mentioned the story where I got about 40 bites on each foot one time.
Ooh, yes, you did.
Unknowingly having walked through it. It was rough.
Crippling?
My feet swelled up pretty bad. It hurt quite badly. Fire ants individually aren't the most painful of ant bites. I've had worse. No. But I have to think that as disciplined as Kalam is, these must have been some rather benign ants compared to those that I'm thinking of.
Yes. I've only had about 4 on me at once, and that's enough. I've not forgotten. Mm-hmm. I've not forgotten that. It's like, no, it's a bad deal.
Kalam edged back through the grasses. He thought, not the first scene of horror I've witnessed after all. A soldier learns to wear every kind of armor, and so long as he stays in the trade, it works well enough. Gods, I don't think my sanity would survive peace. With that chilling thought seeping like weakness into his limbs, Kalam reached the back slope out of the victim's line of sight. Does that sound a bit like PTSD to you? The inability to return to a normal society after experiencing the horrors of war?
Is that always PTSD, or is that just a normal shift that our soldiers have faced? Anybody that's been in a war scene, but some people handle it better than others. But yeah, can you imagine? It's like one day you're killing people. It's, like it or not, it's I'm assuming it does not get more exciting. And I use that term exciting in the clinical sense of exciting. It doesn't get more exciting than that, being in battles and whatnot. But then to come home where it's like you're mowing the grass the next day or whatever, doing the dishes. I mean, that's got to be pretty rough.
Living through continual stress like that for a long period of time, I've never gone through it, but I think that it'd be hard to switch off.
Oh, yeah. And I don't know if that's PTSD or if I know it's akin to it.
Well,
but
it's post-traumatic stress.
that is true. It is stress. You're right. You're correct. That is all traumatic. Seeing all these victims here like that, even as tough as a guy as he is, he doesn't like seeing that. You can't. Nobody wants to see that.
Yeah, and he's talking about if he didn't have to deal with the day-to-day stuff that he's dealing with now in a combat scenario, he doesn't think he'd be able to survive it.
Yeah, and I agree. Especially him. He's not only is he like a soldier, but he's been specially trained by the Claw. And Lord knows what they do, because he said indoctrination.
To your point about indoctrination in the Claw, with Kalam, I don't think he got that kind of training because he had a history as an adult assassin in 7 cities, and he was recruited, which was rare for the Claw to recruit an adult to their ranks.
That's true. But I'm sure there's something to it, but maybe he's that disciplined psychologically. That may be why they sought him. Maybe he's one of the few that could adapt to a life winding down, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, well, we haven't really seen his life wind down yet. So we don't know what it would look like.
I don't recall a lot of him in particular, except just crazy stuff that happens to him all the time. That's the only stuff I can, I don't recall much of his backstory at all.
I'm thinking.
I'm too. And that's okay. That's a good thing. I like exploring, because the only time I think about him is all his awesomeness. Isn't that how you see him? Is just all in his like action in full Kalam, just like beast mode. Kalam's always in beast mode. I mean,
yeah, that's why he's one of my favorite characters, if not my favorite character.
Yeah, agreed. He's beast mode. He's beast mode incarnate. If there was an ascendant for beast mode, it would be Kalam.
Well, there might be another individual in the running for that.
well, I mean, I don't mean quite. You know what I mean? A different kind of beast mode.
Kalam scanned the area, seeking sign of Apt's presence, but saw none. After a moment, he rose into a crouch and padded back to the aspen grove where the others waited. Minala rose from cover as he approached the low brush encircling the silver-leafed trees, crossbow in her hands. Kalam shook his head. In silence, they both slipped between the trees and rejoined the group. Keneb had succumbed to yet another bout of fever. Selv hovered over him in tight-lipped fear that seemed on the edge of panic, holding a water-soaked cloth to Keneb's forehead and murmuring in an effort to still his thrashing and twitching. The children, Vaneb and Kessin, stood nearby, studiously attending to their horses. Minala asked, "How bad is it?" as she carefully uncocked the crossbow. Kalam was preoccupied with plucking and brushing ants from his body for a moment. Then he sighed, "We'll not get around them. I saw standards from the West tribes. Those camps are still growing, meaning the Odan to the west won't be empty. Eastward, we'd run into villages and towns, all liberated and occupied by garrisons. That whole horizon is nothing but smoke." Minala said, "If it was just you, you'd get through. Just another soldier of the apocalypse. It would be a simple task to take picket duty on the south edge, then slip away one night." Kalam grunted, "Not as easy as you think. There's mages in that encampment." He then thought, "And I've held the book in my hands. Not likely I'd stay anonymous." Minala asked, "What difference would that make? Maybe you've got a reputation, but you're no ascendant." Kalam shrugged and straightened, retrieved his pack, set it down, and began rummaging through its contents. Minala said, "You haven't answered me, Corporal. Why all this self-importance? You're not the type to delude yourself, so you must be holding something back from us. Some other significant detail about yourself." Kalam muttered sorcery and pulled free a small object from the pack. He went on, "Not mine, quick Ben's," and held up the object as he quirked a wry grin. Minala said, "A rock." Kalam said, "Aye. Granted, it'd be more dramatic if it was a faceted gem or a torque of gold, but there's not a mage in this world stupid enough to invest power in a valuable object. After all, who'd steal a rock?" Minala said, "I've heard legends otherwise." Kalam said, "Oh, you'll find magic embedded in jewels and such. Sorcerers make up dozens of them, all cursed in some way or other. Most of them are a kind of magical spying device, The sorcerer can track them, sometimes even see through them. Claws use that intelligence gathering method all the time. That's an interesting thought there.
Yeah.
The obvious items that people think would be invested are actually traps. Kind of reminds me of the Holy Grail in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Right. That's too good. Yes, that's very much like that. I think that's a fascinating concept to like you said, that it puts a new spin on that world in a really bad way. It's like that could be some really bad stuff for some thieves.
Yeah, it weeds out the greedy people.
Yes, it does.
Go back to the Jaghut's tomb, Rast's tomb.
Yes, acorn.
There was all those items on that table, and what was the thinnest? It was the acorn.
Yeah, very plain, very overlooked item.
The rest of those things were probably cursed.
You know, in the world of DC, did you ever watch Sandman on Netflix?
No, I did not.
You got to watch that, dude. It's fascinating. They did a brilliant job on it. I mean, despite any changes that were made, it's still a brilliant show. It's one of the best shows they've done. In the comic book, though, Dream Morpheus, actually, that's part of what winds him up in his current state and how he's trapped, is he had invested some of his power into tools instead of just being the power like he is. And so he had created this gem. And that's where you have someone like Dr. Destiny who uses it to do terrible things to people's minds. In that world, it's really awful what he does to people. But yeah, it's a gem. It's in a way, it's for humans to have it. It's a curse because it's too much power. It's too much. It cripples them, overwhelms them. So he has to like get rid of that stuff. So it's but I love that. And here it's very powerful, but it's still not easy to wield. It'd be a ruby. I'm sorry. It's a ruby. I should have told you. It's not just something casual looking.
Okay.
So there you go. There's the turn of it right there. The reason why it's so powerful is it's a ruby, so that would be kind of people would want to steal it, and someone does take it, so because it's a ruby.
In that example, the ruby is it a cursed item or is it?
It's not truly cursed because the person who can wield it is Dream. For him, it's not cursed, but for anyone not basically the power incarnate, it would probably be a curse to them. It is for Dr. Destiny. It destroys his mind. So yeah, I think anyone else that would wield it would probably do the same thing to anyone that's not deity level.
We're gonna go to another Indiana Jones movie. So Kingdom of Crystal Skull, that's more along the lines of that type of scenario, isn't it? Did you ever see that one?
I did not see that one.
Okay. Do you want me to tell you?
Yeah. Tell me. I'm curious. I didn't know if so you like that one? Is it a good movie? Is it entertaining movie? Oh, sorry. Is it entertaining?
It's entertaining enough.
Okay, there we go.
The latest one that came out, I couldn't even finish it. And I'm a lifelong Indiana Jones fan.
Oh, okay. I'm not.
To not even be able to finish it says a lot for me.
See, I just like two. I like two movies. I like the first one, and I don't really like it again. I mean, I don't like to go back and rewatch the original Raiders of the Lost Ark. I like it once or twice. I can't take it in rewatches. And I don't like any of them, but I haven't watched Crystal Skull, or I refuse to watch the new one.
You're not missing much.
Yeah, that's what I heard. I heard it was really awful to indie.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I really like Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
That was the first one I saw. I watch it at least once a year, probably.
Okay.
You know, it's just got some classic moments in it. I never really liked Temple of Doom. Last Crusade, for a long time, I said that was my favorite movie of all time.
Okay, I dug
so
that.
That's kind of the level of love I have for this franchise.
Well, dude, it's the problem there is not indie. It's the problem it's not even a problem. Is it because is it our favorite movie, or is it a great movie because Sean Connery, the late great Sean Connery, was in it with Indiana Jones? I mean, it's not just Indiana Jones. It's like Indiana Jones plus Sean Connery. It's like, dude, that's amazing.
It was excellent, yeah, and funny.
Yeah. Well, Connery's amazing, and so I mean, I love Harrison Ford. I just love that man. But
that's the first time I saw Petra, which I've mentioned before. My love of, you can see the way I talk about Seven Cities. I just love desert life, you know. So like that.
You mean the city of Petra?
The city of Petra, yeah, because that's in Last Crusade. That's where the resting place of the Grail was. They filmed that at Petra.
Okay, right on.
Yeah, well, at least the outside of it. A lot of tourists go there.
I would like to go there. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I would like to go to anywhere mentioned in the Bible.
Yeah. Some of those castles from the Crusade era look pretty neat over in Israel.
Oh, yeah. That would be...
There's like one that's on top of a bluff, you know, out in the desert. Yeah. Like, how did they build this thing out in the middle of nowhere?
Yeah.
It's like on top
It's
of this
awesome.
huge hill. Yeah. Okay. I need to get back to that point about the crystal
Yes.
skull because
Sorry.
it's relevant to the conversation about the gem that you brought
Oh,
up from
the
Sandman.
curse. Yes.
Okay. Yes. So the way you describe that, it's not so much of a curse, but it's the individual that is wielding it is incapable of handling the power that it gave them. And that's
Yes.
ultimately what the crystal skull was. It was an actual alien's skull
Oh,
removed
okay.
from this spaceship that's in South America in the city. The spaceship had a temple built up around it, but ultimately it's a spaceship.
Maybe it's a Carium skull. Sorry.
The Russian lady that was chasing Indy down to find this place and get the skull was ultimately seeking the knowledge of the universe. And so they gave it to her, and her head lit on fire, and
Kind of like
all
the
of
Red
the
Skull.
multi-dimensional knowledge. Yeah, I think your Ruby example is akin to that.
Okay.
Whereas with what we're talking about in the Malazan universe here is actually cursing an item so that there's a negative effect on somebody, either some type of trap, or it's like
a spy device at worst.
An Apple AirTag, so the mage can track you.
Yes. That's exactly what it is. It's a Malatag. Sorry.
All right. let's move along.
Trademark pending.
Yeah. Dude, that's a double trademark issue.
Right.
Because you got the Malazan stuff and then you got the AirTag. So you're going to come at you from two angles on that one. Kalam tossed the rock in the air, caught it, then suddenly sobered. He said this was intended to be used as a last resort. He then thought, in the palace of Unta, actually. Minala asked, what does it do? Kalam grimaced as he thought, I haven't a clue. Quick Ben's not the expansive type, the bastard. Quick Ben had said, it's your shaved knuckle in the hole, Kalam. With this, you can stride right into the throne room. I guarantee it. Reminder that a shaved knuckle is the Malazan equivalent of a trump card. Kalam glanced around, saw a low, flat rock nearby, then said, get everyone ready to move. He crouched down before the flat rock, set the stone on it, then found a fist-sized cobble. He hefted it thoughtfully before bringing it crashing down on the stone. He was shocked as it splattered like wet clay. Darkness swept over them. Kalam looked up and slowly straightened. He thought, damn, I should have guessed. Selv demanded, where are we? In a high, taut voice. One of the children cried, Mother! Kalam turned to see Kessin and Vaneb stumbling in knee-deep ash. I just had a realization. Kessin and Vaneb together is Keneb.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kalam turned to see Kessin and Vaneb stumbling in knee-deep ash. Ash that was filled with charred bones. The horses were shying, tossing their heads as gray dust rose like smoke. Kalam thought, Hood's breath. We're in the Imperial Warren. He found himself standing on a broad, raised dais of gray basalt. Sky merged with land in a formless, colorless haze. He thought, I could wring your neck, Quick Ben. Kalam had heard rumors that such a warren had been created, and the description matched, but the tales he'd picked up on Genebacus suggested that it was barely nascent, extending no more than a few hundred leagues, if leagues meant much here, in a ring around Unta. He thought, instead, it reaches all the way into 7 cities. And Genebacus? Why not? Quick Ben, there could be a claw riding your shoulder right now. Given Kalam was in the claw, I find it surprising that he's never used the Imperial Warren to move around before.
Well, is the Imperial, he mentioned that it was nascent, meaning, newly created, but what is time here? But when was it created? How, I mean, we know, I'm sorry, you and I know how it was created, who is responsible for it, I should say, don't we?
We do.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was thinking. But when was that? I've always perceived it to be a long time ago, but even here he says it's nascent. It's like he thought it may be a newly created thing. Is it only during Lassine's time?
No, it existed before they co-opted it.
Okay. They just co-opted it. When was it co-opted?
I don't know.
Assuming it would be Kellen. Did Kellenvad and Dancer co-opt it? I'm assuming those rascally sons of guns did something to get it.
Probably.
I would love to know more about those two. Those guys, if we think some of these guys are squirrely and wily, Kellenvad and Dancer apparently make these guys look like pikers. In their squirreliness and wiliness, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't really know then. I'm kind of curious. He at least knows what it is.
He had heard of it in rumors, but he was in the claw. So it's strange to me because it seems to be standard practice that the Claw use that. Maybe it's only high-level Claw are allowed to use it.
It could be high-level Claw, and since she's the Empress now, only being used by the Claw because that's her boys. That's her group she created.
Yeah, but you have to assume Kalam would have been in that group.
Was he in that group when she ascended to the throne, or was he a bridge burner?
It's unclear on the sequencing. I think he was a Claw before he became a bridge. I don't know, actually.
Yeah, but
I don't know.
That's my assumption is he was Claw before bridge burner.
Okay.
What was his affiliation before he was Claw? Was it part of the bridge burner cadre or anything like that, or was he just another soldier handpicked because of valorous duty or something, outstanding performance or whatever? And they're like, we need this guy. We picked him, and then when they go back to the military, he's bridge burner after the fact. Or I have no idea what that sequence is either.
In the Seven Cities campaign, the bridge burners became the bridge burners. They were chasing somebody across the desert. Kalam was helping chase that person down.
But he was Seven Cities, though.
He was Seven Cities at the time.
Yes. But it was a trap.
I think they figured out what he was doing. Because this was all covered in Gardens of the Moon, wasn't it?
I think a lot of it was because when he was supposedly chasing down Quick Ben, that was all a ruse, wasn't it? Wasn't he leading him into a trap?
Yeah.
So he's Seven Cities.
He is. And Quick Ben and him were kind of giving the bridge burners the runaround, but Whiskey Jack caught on to it. But at some point, both of them became bridge burners.
Yes.
I think that whole experience tied them all together.
Yes. I'm assuming you're right. They just adopted them in there somehow.
So I'm unclear on when he became a Claw. It had to be after that.
I guess you're right. It would have to be after bridge burners. So thank you. I think you're correct. He would have been a bridge burner. I think that's the only thing that fits the timeline, because that would mean that Kellenved and them were still alive. And these people are remembered by Kellenved, obviously, for them being more than names on paper to these fellows.
And then there's some gap in time. Maybe that's when he became a Claw. Then eventually he got back to the bridge burners.
Yeah, somehow makes it back to the group, and then this stuff goes down. Kellenved and Dancer are supposedly killed and start the Malazan Books of the Fallen.
Yeah. Moving along here, we did talk a little bit about the Imperial Warren very early in Gardens of the Moon when Topper picked up Ganois and led him to the Malazan throne room. We had that excellent scene where he jumped his horse into the throne room. The horse lashed out at Topper, who had to dodge and roll out of the way, getting really angry about it.
Yes.
And we had some really great banter between Lysine and Ganois there.
Brilliant. Just absolutely brilliant.
Given it's been over a year since we discussed it, I'd like to express my amazement again at the thought of a Warren that has multiple feet of ash covering it, ash that is made of bones and other organic matter that once was alive. Yes. The scale of devastation is beyond anything we've seen thus far, short of Jaghut sorcery freezing an entire continent in ice.
It's true. I get nightmares, not nightmares, it's just an unsettling place, because the last time we came here, remember, it looked like something had drugged something off. Like, okay, what's living in here that who's moved into here and is like taking up residence here and is eating the dead people here,
or eating people that are walking through here.
Right, exactly. There's some craziness going on in the Imperial Warren, dude.
Kenneth's children had settled their horses and were now in the saddles, well away from the grisly scorched mound. Kalam glanced over to see Minala and Selv tying Keneb onto his saddle. Kalam approached his own stallion. The beast snorted disdainfully as he swung himself up and gathered the reins. There we go. We get a little attitude that we expect from this horse.
I love it. Gotta have that too there, them horses. I wonder if Mr. Erikson has been hurt by a horse, or if it's just respect, love, fear, like me.
Where do all these sassy horses come from? Minala asked, "We're in a warren, aren't we? I'd always believed all those tales of other realms were nothing but elaborate inventions wizards and priests used to prop up all the fumbling around they did." Kalam grunted. He'd been through enough warrens and plunged into enough chaotic maelstroms of sorcery to take it for granted. Minala had just reminded him that for most people, such a reality was remote, viewed with skepticism if acknowledged at all. He thought, is such ignorance a comfort or a source of blind fear? Minala asked, "I take it we're safe from Corbolo Dom here?" Kalam muttered, "I certainly hope so." Minala asked, "How do we select a direction? There's no landmarks, no trail." Kalam said, Quick Ben says you travel with an intention in mind, and the Warren will take you there. Minala asked, and the destination you have in mind? Kalam scowled, was silent for a long moment. Then he sighed, Aaron. Minala asked, how safe are we? Man, are they playing 20 questions right now?
Well, she has a reason. I mean, she's never been inside a Warren. I mean, he smacks a rock, and next thing you know, we're all of a sudden not where we were. You're knee deep in ash. It's like, if it's bad going through snow, how bad is it going through ash? I think she's earned a little bit of questions here.
You're right. I just thought it was funny because it's like 5 in a row, just hammering him. It's like having a conversation with my 8-year-old.
You know, I think I am always, one of my favorite lines of all time is a guy who remains calm until he doesn't. But you've seen, of course, The Thing, Carpenter's The Thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're tied to the sofa. They've cut everyone's thumb. They're all bled out on the thing. It's like all the horrible stuff happens with the shapeshifters. And it's finally Gary is like, I realize you gentlemen been through a lot. But I'd rather not spend the rest of the effing winter tied to this couch. You know, it's like, so at least she hasn't snapped and been that far, but she's been reasonably calm until now, so she's earned a few questions.
Yeah, agreed. Kalam thought, safe? We've stepped into a hornet's nest. He said, we'll see. Minala snapped, oh, that's a comfort. The image of the crucified Malazan boy rose once again in Kalam's thoughts. He glanced over at Keneb's children and muttered, better this risk than a different certainty. Minala asked, are you going to explain that comment? Kalam shook his head and said, enough talk. I have a city to visualize. Lostara Yil walked her mount up to the gaping hole, understanding at once that, although she had never seen one before, this was a portal way into a warren. Its edges had begun fading, like a wound closing. She hesitated. Kalam had chosen a shortcut, a means of slipping past the traitor's army between him and Aaron. Lostara knew she had no choice but to follow, for the trail would prove far too cold should she manage the long way to Aaron. Even getting through Corbolo Dom's forces would likely prove impossible. As a Redblade, she was bound to be recognized, even wearing unmarked armor as she did now. Still, she hesitated. Her horse reared back, squealing as a figure staggered from the portalway. A man, gray-clothed, gray-skinned, even his hair was gray, straightened before her, glanced around with strangely luminous eyes, then smiled. Speaking in Malazan, he said, not a hole I expected to fall through. My apologies if I startled you. He bowed, the gesture resulting in clouds of dust cascading from him. Lostara realized the gray color was ash. Dark skin revealed itself in patches on the man's lean face.
You've seen Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, of course, I'm hoping.
Yes.
You know the scene where they're riding covered in dust, and the soldiers are riding up to him, and they're going, "Hail Dixie, we love Dixie," and the guys get close to him and slap the dust off of them, and they're not gray, they're actually blue.
Yeah,
I'm assuming it's a lot like that. It's how much dust is on them boys.
He eyed her knowingly and said, you carry an aspected sigil, hidden. She asked, what? As her hand drifted toward her sword hilt. The man caught the motion. His smile broadened. He said, you are a Redblade, an officer, in fact, which makes us allies. Her eyes narrowed. She asked, who are you? The man said, call me Pearl. Now it seems you are about to enter the Imperial Warren. I suggest we do so before continuing our conversation, before the portalway closes. I'll make a note here that this Pearl should not be confused with the Korvala demon named Pearl that Quick Ben unleashed to escape Animander Rake during the rooftop battle in Darujistan. R.I.P. Pearl, by the way.
R.I.P. Pearl, yes.
Yeah, that was a sad scene.
Dude, that's a tough one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tough way to go, Pearl.
Do you pity me, Quick Ben? It's rough.
Yeah, I do.
Lostara asked, can you not keep it open, Pearl? After all, you were traveling it. Pearl's exaggerated frown mocked her. He said, alas, this is a door where no door should be possible. Granted, north of here, even the Imperial Warren is fraught with unwelcome intruders. But their means of entry is far more primitive, shall we say, in nature. So since this portalway is clearly not of your making, I suggest we take immediate advantage of its presence. Lostara said, not until I know who you are, Pearl, rather what you are. Pearl said, I am a Claw, of course. Who else is granted the privilege of traveling the Imperial Warren? She nodded at the portalway and said, someone's just granted that privilege to himself. Pearl's eyes sparkled. He said, "And this is what you shall tell me about, Redblade." She thought for a moment, then nodded and said, "Yes, ideal. I shall accompany you." Pearl took a step backward and beckoned with one gloved hand. Lostara Yul tapped heels to her mount's flanks. Quickben's shaved knuckle in the hole was slower in closing than anyone had anticipated. 7 hours after Lostara and Pearl had vanished within the Imperial Warren, the portalway still gaped, its red-lined edges fading to dull magenta. Echoes of panic and alarm could be heard from Corbolo Dom's encampment. Parties of riders set out in all directions, bearing torches. Mages risked their warrens, seeking trails through the now perilous pathways of sorcery. 1,300 Malazan children had vanished, the liberation unseen by the pickets or the mounted patrols. The X-shaped wooden crosses were bare, with only stains of blood, urine, and excrement to show that living beings had once hung from them in agony. In the darkness, the plain was strangely alive with shadows, flowing sourcelessly over the motionless grasses. Given how superstitious the members of 7 cities can be, imagine the panic this would cause in the ranks of the normal soldiers. 1,300 children vanished into thin air.
That would be a very big deal, and a lot of spitting.
Yes.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
I just kind of like, oh, that's so funny that there's a lot of spit with those curses.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see what happened here? No.
Apt strode silently into the glade. Sweat glistened on her black hide, the thick, spiny bristles of her hair wet with dew. She stood erect, her single forelimb clutching the limp body of a young boy. Blood dripped from his hands and feet, and his face had been horribly chewed and pecked, leaving him eyeless and with a gaping red hole where his nose had been. Faint breaths from fevered, shallow lungs showed in misty plumes that drifted forlornly in the clearing. Apt squatted down on her haunches and waited. Shadows gathered, pouring like liquid between the trees to hover before the portalway. Apt cocked her head and spread her mouth wide in something like a canine yawn. A vague shape took form within the shadows. The glowing eyes of guardian hounds appeared to flank the figure. Shadow Throne whispered, "I thought I had lost you, snared so long by Shaik and her doomed goddess. Yet this night you return, not alone. Oh no, not alone, Aptorian. You've grown ambitious since you were but a demon lord's concubine. Tell me, my dear, what am I to do with over 1,000 dying mortals?" Before we continue with this conversation, this point here needs discussion. We were guessing as to how Puss knew that Shaik was dead last week.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that perhaps Shadowthrone had known based off of Apt's location, as if she was some type of double agent, and this last comment negates that theory. He said that he had thought he lost her.
You know, and I agree, because I'm with you that I think I even chimed in. It's like, oh, maybe she was a double agent. Maybe she was, playing dumb, because Shaik mentioned that they thought she was just stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Just instinct only, like a cockroach or something.
This isn't so much about her intelligence. It's more, I thought Shadow was using her.
Yeah, I did too.
Okay.
I agree. I mean, I was agreeing with that point. I felt that was part of it. And that was like, maybe she was playing a role of like kind of appearing somewhat ignorant, because not letting any intention of herself be known. I'm like you. I think I was agreeing with you on that point.
Okay. So we still don't know how Shadowthrone knows the location of Shaik's body.
I think it's Puss, because he's been out there laying all these trails. It would have to be Puss. Or, the shadows that work for Puss, they also work for Shadowthrone, but curiouser and curiouser.
Yeah. The hounds were eyeing Apt as if the demon was a potential meal. Shadowthrone asked, "Am I a cutter? A healer?" His voice was rising octave by octave. He continued, "Is Cotillion a kindly uncle? Are my hounds farmyard skulkers and orphans puppies?" The form of his shadow flared wildly. He asked, "Have you gone entirely insane?" Apt spoke in a rapid, rasping series of clicks and hisses. Shadowthrone shrieked, "Of course Kalam wanted to save them, but he knew it was impossible. Only vengeance was possible. But now I must exhaust my powers healing 1,000 maimed children, and for what?" Apt spoke again. Shadowthrone said, "Servants? And precisely how big do you think Shadowkeep is, you one-armed imbecile?" Apt said nothing. Her multifaceted eye glimmered in the starlight. Shadowthrone hunched suddenly, his gauze-like cloak wrapping close as he hugged himself. He whispered, "An army of servants. servants, abandoned by the Empire, left to their fates at the hand of Shaikh's bloodlusted bandits. There will be ambivalence in their scarred, malleable souls. He glanced up at Apt and said, I see long-term benefits in your precipitous act, demon. Lucky for you. Apt hissed and clicked. Shadowthrone said, You wish to claim for your own the one in your clutches? And if indeed you are to resume your guardianship of the bridge burner assassin, how precisely will you coordinate such conflicting responsibilities? Apt replied. Shadowthrone sputtered, Such nerve, you coddled bitch! No wonder you fell from the Aptorian Lord's favor. He fell silent, then, after a moment, flowed forward and said, Forced healing demands a price. Shadowthrone murmured. The flesh recovers while the mind writhes with the memory of pain, that bludgeon of helplessness. He raised a sleeve-shrouded hand to the boy's forehead and said, This child who shall ride you shall be unpredictable. He hissed a laugh as the wounds began closing, as new flesh formed on the boy's ravaged face. He asked, What manner of eyes do you wish him to have, my dear? Apt answered. Shadowthrone seemed to flinch. Then he laughed again, harsh and cold this time. He said, The eyes are love's prism. Are they now? Will you go hand in hand to the fishmongers on market day, my dear? The boy's head jerked back, bones altering shape, the twin gaping orbits merging to form a single larger one above a nose bridge that branched to either side, then ran up the outer edge of the socket in a thin, raised ridge, an eye to match the demon's blurred into existence. Shadowthrone stepped back to examine his handiwork. He whispered, Aye. Who then is it who now looks upon me through such a prism? Abyss below. Answer not. He spun abruptly to stare at the portalway and said, Cunning, quick Ben. I know his handiwork. He could have gone far under my patronage. The Malazan boy clambered to sit behind Apt's narrow, jutting shoulder blade. His frail body shook with the trauma of forced healing, and an eternity nailed to a cross. But his ghastly face showed a slightly ironic smile in a line that perfectly matched Apt's. Apt approached the portalway. Shadowthrone gestured and said, Go on then, trail the ones trailing the bridge burner. Whiskey Jack's soldiers were ever loyal, I seem to recall. Kalam does not intend to kiss Lassine's cheeks when he finds her, of that I'm certain. The leader of an empire as large as this remembers a specific company's characteristics. What a formidable ruler he must have been.
Absolutely. And as I was kind of alluding to earlier, I would like to know more about Kellenbed, not necessarily Shadowthrone, but him and Dancer's rise. I haven't read their Path to Ascendancy. Maybe that covers more of that stuff. And I think one of those books just came out from Mr. Esselmont.
Is that the third one in that trilogy?
I think it is. I think he had one just come out here.
Okay.
I think I bought the first couple. I need to buy that one too so I can get ready to read them. I'm curious if it covers more of this backstory. I'd like to know.
Yeah.
I hope it's not like, what is it, the Sanderson who does the prequels of Dune? Another Dune reference. But here it's like Esselmont's been quite well. I've enjoyed
it. Was Kevin J. Anderson.
Oh, thank you. Oh, okay. I get them mistaken with that Sanderson fellow that everyone seems to praise.
Apt hesitated, then spoke one last time. A grimace entered Shadowthrone's tone as he replied, That high priest of mine alarms even me. If he cannot deceive the hunters on the path of hands, my precious realm, which has seen more than its share of intruders of late, will become very crowded indeed. Shadowthrone wagged his head and said, It was a simple task after all. He began to drift away, his hounds following suit. He said, Can anyone find reliable, competent help these days? I wonder. He's talking about Pust.
He is. But one thing I got to ask here. Do you think Pust would have been considered a contemporary of Kellenbad? Well, not Shadowthrone now, but he's been a Shadow Priest for a while. So I'm assuming, would he have been in running to be Shadowthrone?
It's an interesting question from the perspective of the House of Shadow appeared relatively recently.
Right.
I remember Tattersall saying that it joined the deck not that long ago. It had to have been, 7 years ago, something like that?
Yes, that's what would be my assumption.
And I don't know if the people that are priests of Shadow were following some semblance of that before, or if they joined after.
That's a good question. I didn't even think about it like that. Because there was obviously some shadow worship going. It didn't. What shadow has grown into doesn't just crop up over the 7 years.
Right.
I would assume there was some kind of previous worship of shadow, but I'm assuming why it was so quiet from that side was I'm assuming that realm wasn't found until Kellenvad and Dancer stumbled onto it.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow usurped its power.
Yeah, it existed before them, but
right.
I guess it was just sitting out there.
Yeah, it's just empty. It's just like a piece of real estate with no one moving in. I mean, there was some wildlife on it.
So they're
I think,
squatting? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think they are squatters. But no one wants to kick these fellas out, though.
They must have some interesting laws for trying to kick people off your property.
Right? Oh my gosh! Can you imagine the cosmic court case that would be?
Oh
my gosh!
Shadowthrone would defend himself in court.
Oh yes. Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And Dancer would make sure that the witnesses didn't make it to the court hearing. All right. A moment later, Apt was alone, the shadows slipping away. The portal way had begun to weaken, slowly closing the wound between the realms. The demon rasped words of comfort. The boy nodded. They slid into the Imperial Warren. Apt and the boy seemed to have a relationship already. Do you think the boy took to her so quickly because she saved him from his fate?
That would be my assumption.
Okay. Because think about your young boy. Well, it's hard to get in this mindset, but a demon comes up to you. You would normally be scared. But given he can't see anything, he might not even know what she looks like.
Right. He does now.
But somehow he understood what she just said to him.
Yeah. Well, so did Shadowthrone. So
I'm assuming he speaks Aptorian.
Well, I'm guessing so. She apparently speaks Malazan. She understands Malazan because he was speaking. He was speaking what I'm assuming is Malazan. English there is Malazan. I'm assuming. Mm-hmm. But she understands that, but he understands her. Maybe she's able to just make herself understood. Because think about, she apparently brought those kids there.
I think she single-handedly saved all of them.
She did. Mm-hmm. She somehow single-handedly saved them. I would assume it's not just by taking them down by herself. I'm assuming there was an act of sorcery. She's powerful. I'm assuming she has some magic to her as well. She's inherently magic, I'm assuming, being a demon.
Yeah.
And from where she's from. So she's inherently magic. And so did she just use that hold to shunt those kids over into Shadow? Not into the Imperial Warren, mind you, but into Shadow. Mm-hmm. So she shipped those kids to Shadow, either by bargaining. I think she shipped them there, and then he showed up kind of like, hey, where do these kids come from? I'm not running a preschool here.
What are these kids doing on my lawn?
Yeah. What do you get? What's all these folks doing here, man? So she's powerful. So she's a lot more powerful. There's more to Apt than we are shown. Mm-hmm. There's a lot more to Apt than we're shown.
I wonder what she did to fall out of favor with the Lord of the Aptorians or whatever.
Yeah, some demon. Yeah, she was some demon lord's concubine. So it's like, he was some demon squeeze, and it's like I ticked him off. He was a girlfriend, not even a wife. He was one of the girlfriends. So I'm assuming she's probably better looking than the wife. Because the girlfriend, it's got the girlfriend on the side, and it's like she's the girlfriend on the side kind of deal, but the legal one, and she's kicked, and he kicked her out. So it's like she must have done something, killed some of his brides or something. Who knows?
Maybe she tried to poison the wife or something.
Could be.
All right, and thus the chapter ends.
Good chapter.
Yes. For standout moments, the hundreds of crucified Malazan children leaves a lasting impression. That's a core memory.
Yes, agreed. Core memory, lasting impression.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The shaved knuckle in the hole that Quick Ben gave Kalam is yet another testament to his skill as a mage.
You know what's funny? I think I miss Quick Ben as a character the most in this book. But he's absent but not forgotten in this book. That's what's so funny about him. He's the one that's provided them with the tools to wind up here. So we've talked about Quick Ben quite a few times too. It's along with Kalam and Fiddler in this book. They've both mentioned Ben a lot. So he's there in spirit. Mm-hmm.
You miss Quick Ben more than Gano is in this book?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I kind of miss Ganois now that I've come to a real appreciation and love of Ganois after I read through. Because the first time I read this, Ganois was like, he's kind of. I thought he's kind of annoying sometimes, but it's like, no, I like him a lot now, and I do miss him too.
Yeah, that attitude he's got towards the Ascendants is wonderful.
Yeah, we need some of that here. I think this is why we have Pust, is to fill that in for us. Crazy yet powerful son of a gun.
Apt bargaining with Shadow Throne to save those children was a surprise.
Yes. And all that stuff that we just talked about at the end there about Apt and all those reveals about her, very, very big reveals, big surprises.
I thought it was particularly noteworthy that her justification to Shadow Throne was Kalam wanted to save them.
Yes. Yes. Is she sweet? Is Apt sweet on Kalam?
I was thinking about it, and I wonder if...
Not like in love, but does she admire, like Kalam in some way? Obviously. She's got something for him.
I wonder if she's literally taking the command to assist him to the next level, where it's like, look, this guy that I'm supposed to be assisting on his quest wants to save these kids, so maybe we should save these kids.
Or are you giving the Hal argument?
What's that?
I'm sorry, 2001?
Right, but what's
2010? Well, Hal kills all those people in 2001, the spacemen.
Right.
But he did it because he was given the impossible problem of solving this equation, and he couldn't do it without killing the humans. The only thing to do is to get rid of the humans.
The humans cause the problem in the equation?
Exactly. The humans are the problem. They're the problem in the equation, so I have to kill the humans. So Hal is actually cleared in 2010. He didn't do it out of malice. He didn't murder them with a willingness or a happiness. It was just a solution to finish the mission. So that's that logic almost that you're saying. Is she just following her orders? She's following our orders.
That's one possibility. I'm not sure. The other one could be like, yeah, maybe she just likes the way Kalam handles himself. And she's like, look, we should do what this guy's wanting to do.
Yeah. Well, there's benefits. And also she's proven herself to be way more intelligent than we thought. So she's probably a highly intelligent entity.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's thought this all out pretty well. But yeah, I think there's that. But I think it's a respect on Kalam.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
And then her asking to have the boy's face repaired with a mirror image of her eye. That's another interesting choice.
Yes. And that has always stayed with me because it's quite horrific.
It is. Kind of reminds me of a deformed Brundlefly in a way.
Oh my gosh.
You know, because he had two eyes, right?
Yes.
It's just like one.
But yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what I think of her. It's like some black eye anyhow.
Yeah.
That she's got. So I'm like, kind of a somewhat human-esque face. Was once a human-ish face. Single horrific eye.
Mm. Finally, I enjoyed hearing Shadow Throne speak. We've rarely experienced it, but it's been interesting every time.
Yes, I agree. And I love that he's such a character. And I have to remember how powerful Shadow Throne is. We'd mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but in Gardens, remember when Rake and him were facing each other, Rake mentioned he wasn't sure if he'd have survived that encounter. That says a lot. I don't think we ever see anything that hints at any limits that Shadow Throne has ever shown. He's just kind of he's almost like a Deus Ex Machina. Not quite, but he's a guy that when he's around, it's like there's not going to be a lot of answers on his side, at least. And his power seems to be almost limitless.
He does use it sparingly, though. He's not quick to use it.
Yes. Well, they are some planning fellas.
Mm-hmm.
They plan and plan and plan. I guess you don't become an emperor before becoming a usurper of a realm without being within plans kind of folks.
Right.
They got plans for their plans.
If anything, they're highly prepared.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, such a core memory there with Apt getting her son. That has always stayed with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very strange and troubling.
Yeah. All right. You got any final thoughts before we drop off here?
No, just a great episode, man. What a great ending to that great chapter.
Yeah. Great job tonight.
Hey, man. Good job.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
See y'all next week.
We thank you all for joining us today.
Again, we really like to thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we've had a really great time talking about the topic today.
If you would like to support our show, you can find us at horsefrogproductions.com, where you can find our Patreon link. Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description.
And if you'd like to contact us through email, it's at contact@horsefrogproductions.com.